Let's talk about a principle, a way of living that I believe can change everything for you. We all know life can be difficult. Challenges come our way, and they come often. Sometimes we find ourselves overwhelmed by the weight of circumstances, wondering how we will possibly get through. But I want to tell you today, with all the confidence I have in my heart, that you don't have to carry that burden alone. There's a better way. There's a way where the load gets lighter, where you don't have to struggle and strain with everything on your shoulders. There's a way that invites peace, a way that leads to hope, and a way that guarantees victory. So many of us are trying to manage our own lives in our own strength. We take on every problem, every worry, every fear, and we try to fix it all ourselves. It's as if we're saying, I've got this. We try to control the outcome, we make the decisions, and then we carry the weight of everything that comes with it. But let me tell you something today. God never intended for you to carry it all. In fact, God never intended for you to carry anything by yourself. The good news is He's right there beside you, ready to carry those burdens for you. And what I want to encourage you with today is this simple truth. Let God handle it. Let God handle it, because when you do, everything changes. You see, when you try to handle it all by yourself, you're setting yourself up for frustration, exhaustion, and defeat. You're depending on your own wisdom, your own strength, your own ability to solve every problem. But let me ask you, how's that working out for you? When we rely on ourselves, we often fall short. We make mistakes. We get tired. And we don't always have the answers. And when we don't have the answers, we get anxious. Anxiety takes root. Worry creeps in. And before long, we're consumed by the pressure of trying to fix everything. But when you let God handle it, you open the door to His wisdom, His power, and His peace. You acknowledge that on your own, you're limited. You recognize that you need help that can only come from the Creator of the universe. And when you do that, you give Him the room to work. You stop fighting battles on your own and let Him fight them for you. You stop carrying burdens that were never meant to be yours to carry in the first place. Now, this doesn't mean you'll never face challenges again. It doesn't mean that life will always be easy, but it does mean that when challenges come, you don't have to face them alone. And it means that God is working behind the scenes in ways you can't see, orchestrating everything in your favor. You may not always understand how, but you can trust that He's handling it. There's a story in the Bible that illustrates this beautifully. You may remember the time when the Israelites were trapped between the Red Sea and the Egyptian army. They had no way out. They were stuck. They had no strength to fight, and it was in that moment of desperation that God spoke through Moses and said to the people, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." You see, when they stopped trying to figure it out, when they stopped trying to solve the problem themselves, God moved on their behalf in a mighty way. And He'll do the same for you. The truth is, you cannot win the battles of life on your own. But when you let God fight for you, when you give Him the reins, He will move mountains on your behalf. When you let God handle it, He takes responsibility for the outcome. That doesn't mean you're passive. No, we still have a role to play. We still have to trust, still have to obey, still have to follow His lead. But it means we take our hands off the situation, step back, and trust that God will do what only He can do. And let me tell you, He is able. I want to remind you today that the God who created the heavens and the earth, the one who parted the Red Sea, the one who raised Jesus from the dead, that God is on your side. He has no limits, no boundaries, no challenges that are too big for Him. And when you let God handle it, you tap into that limitless power. Let me give you a practical way to do this. The first thing you need to do is surrender. Surrender is an act of trust. It's saying, God, I can't do this. I can't fix this, but I trust you to handle it. It's acknowledging that you don't have all the answers, and that's okay because he does. It's releasing control and letting go of your own need to manage every detail. Surrender isn't passive. It's an active decision to trust in God's ability to work things out for your good. Next, you need to pray. Prayer is how you connect with God. It's how you tell him what's on your heart, how you bring your worries and concerns to him. When you pray, you're inviting God into your situation, and that's when things start to change. I've seen it time and time again. When people pray, God moves. When you bring your burdens to God in prayer, he doesn't ignore you. He hears you, and he responds. But let me tell you, prayer is not about telling God what he should do. It's about trusting. The first step in letting God handle it is to surrender your own desire for control. Acknowledge that you cannot fix every problem on your own and trust God with the outcome. Understand that God has no limits and is capable of handling anything that comes your way. When you let him take the reins, you're tapping into his boundless power and divine wisdom. Use prayer as a way to bring your worries, fears, and burdens to God. And prayer is not about telling God how things should go, but about trusting him to work in the best way possible for your good. Just as God fought on behalf of the Israelites, he will fight for you. You don't have to face life's battles alone. When you let God handle it, he takes responsibility for the outcome and works things out for your good. Surrendering control is something that often feels counterintuitive to us. We live in a world that places a great deal of emphasis on personal responsibility, on being able to manage our lives, and on achieving things through our own effort. The pressure to be in control is everywhere, and we often carry the burden of thinking that if we don't keep a tight grip on everything around us, things will fall apart. But in reality, this desire for control is not always in our best interest. It can lead to frustration, exhaustion, and anxiety. There's something freeing about letting go of the need to control every aspect of your life. It's not about being passive or lazy. It's not about abandoning responsibility altogether. It's about recognizing that no matter how hard you try, there are forces in life beyond your control, and that's okay. In fact, it's more than okay. It's essential for your peace and well-being. When you surrender control, you're acknowledging that God is in charge and that he is perfectly capable of handling every situation you face. And that act of surrendering brings a profound sense of peace, knowing that you don't have to bear the weight of the world on your own. The need to control comes from a place of fear and insecurity. We're afraid of what might happen if things don't go the way we want them to. We fear the unknown, and we fear losing something important to us. But the reality is that life is full of uncertainties. And no matter how much we try to control the outcome, we can't predict everything. We can't foresee the future, we can't control other people, and we can't always change our circumstances. And yet, trusting in God's power and wisdom is one of the most foundational principles in the Christian faith. It is the belief that despite our limited understanding and finite abilities, God's power is limitless, and his wisdom is beyond compare. We as human beings are often bound by our own perspectives and experiences, and it's easy to feel overwhelmed when we face problems that seem insurmountable. We wonder if we have the strength to overcome, if we have the right answers, if we have the ability to navigate through challenges. But the truth is, when we rely on our own understanding, we're working within constraints. We are finite, and we don't always have the full picture. God, on the other hand, has no limits. His wisdom is perfect, and His power is unfathomable. There are moments in life when we are faced with situations that leave us feeling helpless. We can't control the outcomes, we don't know what to do, and we can't always see a way forward. But it is precisely in those moments that trusting in God's power and wisdom becomes not just important, it becomes transformative. To trust in God means that we acknowledge that He is able to do what we cannot. It means that we let go of our need to understand every detail, our need to solve every problem, and we surrender to the idea that He knows what is best. Trusting in God's power means recognizing that He is sovereign over everything, over your life, over your circumstances, and over the entire universe. Nothing happens outside of His knowledge or control. This is an incredible truth, one that should bring comfort and peace. When you trust in God's power, you are acknowledging that He is in charge, that He has the ability to move mountains, and that He will not leave you in your struggles without providing a way through. You are trusting that He has the strength to do what you cannot do on your own. God's power isn't just a theoretical idea, it's a force that works in your life. The Bible is filled with accounts of God's power in action. Think of the story of the Israelites being delivered from Egypt, where God parted the Red Sea, allowing His people to pass through on dry land, and then closed the waters over their enemies. Think of the story of the walls of Jericho falling after the Israelites marched around them in faith. God's power is not limited to the pages of Scripture. It is available to you today. God can and will work in your life in powerful ways when you trust Him. It's not just about what God can do, it's about what He chooses to do. God's wisdom is perfect, and His actions are always aligned with His goodness and His love. He has a plan for your life, one that is far greater than anything you could ever imagine or plan for yourself. His wisdom is not based on human understanding. It is infinite and perfect. While we often make decisions based on our limited knowledge and short-term thinking, God's wisdom is far-reaching and eternal. He sees the big picture, and He knows what is best for us in the long run. Prayer is not just a religious practice or a way to request things from God. It is the means by which we connect with the Creator of the universe. It is through prayer that we develop an intimate relationship with God, where we can pour out our hearts, listen for His guidance, and align our wills with His. Prayer is not just about asking for what we need or want, but about coming into His presence with a spirit of humility, gratitude, and faith, and allowing that connection to shape us into who we are meant to be. It is through prayer that we find the strength to face life's challenges, the wisdom to make decisions, and the peace that surpasses all understanding. The act of praying is an invitation into relationship. It is an acknowledgement that we are not alone in this world, that there is a higher power, a loving Father who desires to be close to us. Many times we feel disconnected from God. Life moves fast, we face struggles, and we experience doubts, but prayer is the bridge that brings us back into communion with God, no matter how far we may feel from Him. It is through prayer that we are reminded that God is always near, always listening, and always ready to respond. Prayer begins with the understanding that there are moments in life when you feel as though the weight of the world is on your shoulders. You face challenges, obstacles, and struggles that seem insurmountable, and you may begin to question how you will ever get through them. The battles feel too great, and the circumstances too overwhelming. But in those moments, there's a profound truth that you can hold on to. God fights for you. You do not have to face life's battles alone, and the God who created the heavens and the earth is on your side, working on your behalf in ways you cannot always see. One of the most powerful aspects of trusting in God is understanding that He is not just a distant observer of your life. He is actively involved in your struggles, fighting for your victory and your well-being. The idea of God fighting for you isn't just a comforting notion. It is a truth that has been demonstrated throughout history and is woven into the fabric of Scripture. From the beginning of time, God has been present, intervening in the lives of His people, providing protection, guidance, and strength. His battles are fought with perfect wisdom, power, and love, and the outcomes are always for His glory and your good. When you face challenges, whether they are personal, relational, financial, or spiritual, it can be tempting to feel as though you are in the fight alone. You might feel isolated, exhausted, and as though the weight of the struggle is more than you can bear. But God is not absent in those moments. He is not a passive bystander. He is a warrior, fighting for you with all of His might. And when you trust in Him, you are inviting Him into the battle, allowing Him to take charge and fight on your behalf. There is a powerful example of God fighting for His people in the story of the Israelites during their escape from Egypt. After the Israelites had been freed from slavery, they found themselves trapped between the Red Sea and the pursuing Egyptian army. The people were terrified, and it seemed like all hope was lost. But God spoke through Moses, telling the people, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." In that moment, the Israelites had no way out. They could not fight the Egyptian army themselves, and there was no human solution to their predicament. But God stepped in, parting the Red Sea and leading them safely through to the other side. The Egyptian army in pursuit was destroyed as the waters returned to their place. God fought for them when they were powerless to fight for themselves. This is the same God who fights for you today. The challenges you face might look different, but the truth remains the same. God is on your side. He is the same God who parted the sea, who delivered His people from oppression, and who has been faithful throughout all generations. Just as He fought for the Israelites, He is fighting for you. His power is not limited by time or circumstance, and His commitment to you is unwavering. When we talk about God fighting for us, it's important to recognize that this doesn't mean we won't face struggles or battles. Life is filled with difficulties, and sometimes it feels like the battles are relentless. But the difference is that when God fights for you, He provides a strength beyond your own. You don't have to rely on your own resources, your own strategies, or your own wisdom. God is fighting with you, for you, and through you. And when God is fighting for you, there is no enemy, no obstacle, no situation that is too great for Him to overcome. Another example of God fighting for His people is seen in the life of David. David, the young shepherd boy, was chosen by God to be king of Israel. But before he took the throne, he faced many challenges. One of the most famous stories is the battle between David and the giant Goliath. Goliath, a towering warrior from the Philistine army, taunted the Israelites, challenging them to send out a warrior to face him in single combat. The Israelites were afraid, and no one dared to face the giant. But David, a young boy with no experience in battle, stepped forward in faith. He didn't rely on physical strength or military strategy. Instead, he trusted in God's power. David declared to Goliath, "You come against me with sword and spear, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty." And with a single stone, David defeated the giant, not because of his own ability, but because God fought for him. This story reminds us that when God fights for us, it's not about the size of the challenge or our ability to overcome it. It's about the power of God to work through us, no matter how weak or inadequate we may feel. Just as God used David to defeat Goliath, he can use you to overcome the battles in your life. Your strength doesn't come from your own ability, but from the power of God working through you. When you face battles, trust that God is with you, just as he was with David. He will give you the strength to overcome, even when the odds seem impossible. God's fight on your behalf is not limited to physical battles. It extends to the spiritual battles you face as well. Every day we are in a spiritual battle, facing temptation, doubt, fear, and the forces of darkness that seek to steal, kill, and destroy. But God has already won the ultimate victory over sin, death, and the enemy. When Jesus went to the cross, he fought the greatest battle of all, defeating the powers of darkness and offering us the gift of eternal life. Through his death and resurrection, Jesus made it possible for us to be victorious in every spiritual battle we face. When you are in a spiritual struggle, remember that Jesus has already won the victory. You can stand firm in that truth, knowing that God is fighting for you and that the enemy has no power over you. In the midst of our struggles, it's easy to feel like we are alone, that no one understands what we're going through, or that we're fighting a losing battle. But God's presence in your life means that you are never alone. He fights for you not only in times of crisis, but also in the everyday struggles of life. He fights for you in your relationships, in your work, in your health, and in your faith. No matter what you're facing, God is with you, and he is fighting for your good. His love for you is relentless, and he will never leave you or forsake you. When you trust in God's promise that he is fighting for you, it changes your perspective on the battles you face. Instead of seeing yourself as a victim, you begin to see yourself as a conqueror because God is on your side. The battles may still be hard, but you can face them with confidence, knowing that victory is assured. You can rest in the truth that God is fighting for you and that his power is greater than anything you can imagine. God's fight for you is not just about winning battles, it's also about transforming you in the process. As you face trials and challenges, God uses those experiences to strengthen your faith, to refine your character, and to draw you closer to him. The battles you face are opportunities for you to rely on God's strength and power, and through them you become more like Christ. God fights for you not just to change your circumstances, but to change you. When you find yourself in the middle of a struggle, remember that God is fighting for you. He is not absent. He is not indifferent. He is actively involved, working on your behalf in ways you may not always see. He has already won the ultimate victory, and he will give you the strength to overcome every challenge, every battle, and every obstacle. All you need to do is trust in him, rest in his promises, and know that he will fight for you.